All right, let me see there. Okay. All right. Happy Sunday. Happy, gosh, halfway through July. So essentially, what are we halfway through summer? So some of you, that might make you happy. Maybe you're ready for your kids to go back to school. I would actually live in summer all year long. But that being said, I hope that you did something that you enjoy this weekend. So tonight we have a special guest speaker, Dr. Joshua Weaver, known as Josh to me. He's my brother. So he's a superintendent of a school district, and he's done several trainings on leadership and discipline and grit and grace. And so I don't know about you, but it's been really hard for me to stay on task this summer. Um, like I know I should be doing my Plexus business, but I'm like, oh, look, it's nice outside, or oh, she asked me to go here, or so I know myself, I've been having a hard time just really being disciplined. So, and Plexus gives us amazing trainings, right? But it's always nice to hear from somebody else outside of the Plexus world. So he is here tonight. He's going to give us some tips on leadership and just, doing the hard when you don't want to. And, I like to give credit where credit is due. And so I would like to thank me because I was a manipulative toddler. And every time I didn't want to do something, I was tired and he had to do it. And he did it every time with perfection. So I coerced him to do everything that I didn't want to do. So I take credit for him starting off in this world with hard work and perseverance. So you are welcome.
Well, thank you, Jess, because I was going to talk about how I actually didn't really think about how you always got really tired or didn't feel well when it was time to clean up. And I did. I cleaned up every time. I thought a little bit more about how, you're in like this great leadership role now with Plexus and growing your business. I'm certainly very proud of you. But growing up, Jess was the leader. I had a terrible speech problem that was connected to a hearing issue. So I spent from preschool through, I don't know, fifth grade, sixth grade in speech therapy. So Jess, being 15 months younger than me, 18 months ago, always kind of spoke for me because it took a long time to listen to me because I stuttered and had a bit of a speech impediment. So it's funny how, now, in our roles in life, both having some leadership capacity, I oftentimes, I actually don't share that all the time. I share it sometimes to let people know, like, you can grow in leadership. Like I don't know if I believe in the natural born leader. I think people are certainly more apt to maybe be in a role like this, or more apt to talk to people, or more friendly. And we'll talk about some of those things tonight. But I think it's a skill that can grow, and I think it's a skill that can grow through practice and preparation and being diligent. So I was going to give Jess a little credit for that because she spoke for me a good bit when I was younger, and I'm excited to be here tonight to sort of see this side of things as well. So you want me to start, Jess? All right. So I'm Josh, Jess's brother. She introduced me. This is my 23rd year in education, which is really hard for me to believe. I've been a high school physics teacher. I've been a high school assistant principal, high school principal, upper elementary principal. I was assistant superintendent for 9 years. And then July 1st, I became the superintendent at Grove City Area School District, where I spent the last 9 years as assistant superintendent. So to your point of the stories of some new leadership, in your schools there, I recognize that can be really tough. There's something to be said about stability. But right now, the average superintendent, tenure in a school district, is about 3.2 years, believe it or not. So the leader at the helm of a school district that should be, you're never all knowing, but should have a pulse on everything, set the vision. The minimum contract most folks get for those are 2 or 3 years. The maximum gets a 5-year contract, but the average is a 3.2 before people move around. I don't know how anybody in a role like this gets anything going in the right direction with any sustainability when you have turnover that fast. So I'm excited at the thought of moving into my first year, my 5-year contract as superintendent, and generally hope I could spend the rest of my career there, because I think that's sustainability is where you start to really see a difference in the stuff that you get to accomplish with people, students, staff, parents, and a community. So some of the things that I've done, over the years that I value tremendously, and I've probably become almost maybe obsessed is the wrong word, but it might be a little bit obsessed around some of these as I share, and I'll sort of pinpoint those pieces. But I think the number one most important thing that any of us do in any business or in life is build relationships. And I know that's not, I don't think any of this is going to be news to anybody tonight. I'm just sharing some of the things that work for me. Certainly I'll stay on as long as anybody wants to chat about any of these things or can follow up with another call at some point. But it's building relationships. And my family teases me, like if I'm at the store with my wife or my son or daughter, the group, we'll be at checkout at Aldi's or Walmart, and they'll say, "How do you know that person?" I said, I've never met that person in my life." And I smile, I make eye contact, and I still genuinely like people, even having been in a role like this for a long time. Um, People in some ways very much feed me, and then but I get sort of a saturation point. Like sometimes on a Friday night after a long week, and then I'm there for a football game till 9:30, 10 o'clock. I come home and I'm pretty tapped out. So you got to find sort of that balance. But I think building relationships is the key to success in anything that any of us do. Church, family, work, a business like this. And one of the things that I would say that I don't think these words that I'm proud of myself, but I am proud of myself in the sense of when I build relationships with folks, they're very genuine. Um, I'll be kind and respectful to anybody and everybody. I'm a little sensitive to who ends up sort of in that inner circle or who I spend a lot of time with. I don't know if any of you ever read any of John Gordon's work. He wrote several books, and they're all like fable like. But one of them is The Energy Bus. It was an early on book that he wrote, and he talks about how in that book that people can really energize you, but then he talks about energy vampires, how they can just suck the life out of you. So I'm very sensitive to folks who will suck the life out of me. I'm there for them professionally. They need something, so be it. But I'm not surrounding myself with folks like that. But I do value building relationships tremendously. Sometimes I get teased that I can work a room, or I can, somebody called me a little salesy the other day, and took it as a compliment, even though I'm not sure it was at the moment. But I really like getting to know people, and I don't think there's any piece more important in life than that. Jess introduced me as Dr. Joshua Weaver, but at work, the students there call me Dr. Weaver, but I request the parents and staff all call me Josh, even if the kids are around. Very much have that relationship building piece where we're all in it together. I have learned over the years, though, in these roles that when a parent talks to you 10 times and they call you Josh, and then the 11th time when they call you and they say Dr. Weaver, they're not happy about something. And one little trick I use to diffuse them being upset is, wow, you always call me Josh. You just called me Dr. Weaver. What are you upset about? And for some reason, it puts them on their heels a little bit. That not disrespectfully, but it's like, I can tell you're upset. So why don't we go back to the relationship that we've had, where it was okay to call me Josh, even if you're upset about something. Let's try to work through that. I recently I got into audiobooks over the last couple of years. I'm not like, I have a lot of, the bookshelf here is over here. I have a lot of books, but books, when I read them, I feel really tired. So I don't do a lot of reading, but I do a ton of audiobooks. I have a 35-minute commute each way to work. Exercise usually daily, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I've been doing a lot of audiobooks and podcasts. And one of the books I read recently was Dale Carnegie's book on how to influence people and build friendships. Let me check the exact title: How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it was such simple little strategies. One of them is a leadership piece I think we often miss is listening. I think a lot of leaders, and this is so like the hypocrisy around this, because I'm just speaking to all of you tonight, right? But one of the biggest ways to build relationships and I think be a great leader is to be a really good listener. People want to share about themselves. So if you want to build a relationship with them, you have to give them the space for them to tell you about them. And it's one of the, there's several little strategies in there. I listened to a podcast the other day where somebody else was talking about that. It was Guy Fieri was talking about how he's going to make every one of his kids, go through a Dale Carnegie course about building relationships and influencing people. And it sounds a little bit hokey, but it really, in my opinion, it really sets people apart in their leadership roles. I've worked with some folks in education, and I know at least Robin for sure is in education. Sometimes superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals can be really good at standing in front of a group and talking at them for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, take up the time in a faculty meeting. And that's not a great relationship building strategy. It tends to grind on people a bit. So taking that time to interact and listen more than we speak, I think is really a key piece to building relationships. Second thing I thought about, and had a little time last week. We were down in Deep Creek, so a little time last week to just reflect when I was kayaking or relaxing, hanging out, was the idea of being consistent. And Jess kind of mentioned that, today, like it is tough. Like the weather's nice, and you have other things you want to do. So being consistent and committed can be really challenging, and I get that. One of the things, just in preparation for this, I thought, what's it really take, like, to build a habit, right? To be consistent, to have discipline. And from the little bit of research that I saw, studies suggest it takes 66 days or 66 times to build a habit. Some can be as few as 18, depending on the complexity of the habit, up to 254 days to build a habit. So you think about that, 365 days in a year. I mean, there's some habits it takes you 254 days of being consistent and consecutive in order for that to become a habit. So that's why building consistency and discipline is hard. It's hard to find the time day in and day out because life is life. Life comes at us fast, and there are things that come up. So it's easy to miss a workout or not follow up, with somebody, or not check in with somebody when you thought you were going to. So for me, being consistent and disciplined is also essential to my structure, to my work as a superintendent, my work, and I do some stuff in real estate. I still do a little bit of side work once in a while. I'm teaching a class for Gannon right now as well. Like, I like to keep busy, but it's being structured, consistent, and disciplined. So some of the things I'm extremely disciplined about are my workouts, as an example. And I'm not like in the greatest of shape. My whole goal around working out, so I'll be honest, it's probably a little bit of vanity, but I know many of you know Jess and I lost her dad at what I consider a young age. I have two young, well, one's 17 and one will be 6 this week. I just want to be around for my kids. Like, I want to be available for them. I want to be able to play with them. I want to be able to play with their kids. So part of my whole, working out and trying to eat right is really about just being here, for family. But I've probably become almost a little maybe obsessive about it. But for me now, it's like, because it's become such a habit for me, if I don't do it, I feel off. Like, it's even on vacation, I ran several miles over several days. I took my bike. I biked several times. Addie, my daughter, and I, like, we did this. We went to the gym one day. Like, I don't feel myself if I don't get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Tomorrow morning, it'll be 1.5 miles of rucking, and then at least 7/10 of a mile running, maybe a mile running. And then I'll come and hit the weights a little bit before I even get a shower to go to work. And again, that's not the be all end all. That sets the tone for my day, right? So that's consistency. That's a great deal of discipline. Food, like, I'm not the greatest, but I try to eat pretty healthy, try to cut out the sugar, try to watch here and there, but none of us are perfect with that. And I don't think any of us need to ever be perfect. Like, you need to allow some cheat meals and some comfort foods when you need them. But again, it's how do you build a habit around that? It takes a long time. And you got to offer yourself a lot of grace with that. Very consistent with my faith. And that's something I've grown in as a child. That was not part really of our lives. And I was like really resistant to it for whatever reason. I think it was a bit inconvenient for me as a child, and not really pushing that direction. So very different as a dad and as a husband when it comes to my faith. And again, it comes back to being consistent and disciplined, because it's easy to miss a Sunday and have that one Sunday turn into the next Sunday. So if you can't make it, for me, it's like the consistency of the Bible app and having a partner in that, which is actually a cousin of ours who lives all the way in Montana. We're always in plans together, trying to stay connected. Um, Another organizational consistency discipline piece for me is just following up with folks. Following up and following through, I think is really essential, not only in your business from for Plexus standpoint, but for me is my role as superintendent. But for me in my role with relationships, like I saw something just the other day, scrolling through some social media, and it was an interview with Michelle Obama, and she talked about just friendships and friendships. Friendships don't happen if you don't nurture them, right? Like you can't have a friend text you 10 times and never text them back and think that that's your friend. You can't have friends call you and never call them back and think that you're doing your part to nurture that friendship, right? So all relationships take time, effort, and energy. um, Staying organized and staying consistent and being disciplined to follow up with folks and then follow through with them, I think is critical. And it all circles then back to that relationship piece, right? So I was out all week last week, put up an away message. I took care of the things that needed taken care of. Like I checked it's on my phone. I had my Chromebook with me. So every once in a while I would open up my email just to make sure nothing was on fire, right? Like make sure nothing was really big going on. Um, you know, but I'll follow up with those things that I need to tomorrow morning. I have a parent text me about something. It's a parent that I already have a pre-established relationship with. Friday, I'm on the boat. And he's like, "Hey, can you give me a call?" I said, "No, Mom, I'm away with my family, but I'll call you on Monday." And it's in my calendar. Like I very much live by my calendar now, which I never thought I would be like that. But there are so many moving parts every day, and I'll talk a little bit about some of my structure with that in a moment. But if it weren't in my calendar or my to-do list, that'd be hard for me to keep up. There are some days that I have back-to-back meetings where literally the only time I feel like I'm by myself is in the restroom. I'm eating my lunch with somebody because they needed something and that was the time I had to give them, and that's all fine. That doesn't bother me. That's part of being responsible and having a role like that. Um, I need to work a little better now that my assistant is there. Need to work a little harder at creating a little space in the day, because there's still like my day isn't always just meetings. Like there are still people to respond to. There's planning, there's vision work that needs to be done, which I'm going to talk about in a few. And you can't neglect all those things because you're constantly just checking off, the list when it comes to meetings and doing things of that nature. Um, One of the structures that I have that has worked really well for me is I have two admin assistants that I've worked with now in my, working on my 10th year at Grove City. And the one who has now officially become my admin assistant over the last 5 months, we've created a structure that every morning that I walk in the door, she has my Google to-do list printed for me, and she has my calendar, my day printed for me, and we sit down and we go through my to-do list, we go through my calendar, we add things, we delete things, we rearrange things. We look out to the week, usually briefly on Mondays. And that structure for me has been critical because it's time for Sharon and I to debrief. She's gotten better at, like, she doesn't interrupt me anymore in like after we have that meeting, because she just keeps a notepad. So everything she needs from me, she jots down. So she's writing notes throughout the day. She's adding to the to-do list. She's taking things off the to-do list. She's manipulating my calendar a little bit if somebody calls to schedule an appointment. But every single morning, if I get there at 7:30 tomorrow morning, I'll do it at 7:30. If I stop at a building tomorrow morning, I don't get there till 9, we'll do this at 9 o'clock. We go through her list so she gets to stay caught up with all the little things. And she is a task master. Like, I love her. It's a double-edged sword because there are things that are not my priority at the moment, but they're Sharon's priority. So I need to tend to some of those things. And then the adjustment of the to-do list, she reminds me things that need done. So there are things she likes to take off my plate if she can. Hey, Josh, I can make that phone call. I'll take care of that. That's something I can work on. So she's been excellent. But that's a structure for me that's been priceless in terms of staying on task. Once the school year starts, we're going to add Fridays into that, Friday afternoons, and it's going to be a look ahead for the following week. So but again, it takes a great deal of consistency. Like I don't always want, and I love her, but I do not always want to sit down as soon as I walk in the door. But I know that it's important, and I might grab a hot cup of tea or something, or I might sit down for a few minutes, look at a couple emails before we do this. But it's pretty early when I get in. But it's been I don't know how I could do this without that kind of structure. But it goes also back to, and you'll see, I'm going to try to sort of always bring things back. It goes back to that relationship that I have with her. She will do her absolute best to protect me from anything coming my direction, right? And vice versa. We're all human and all fallible. If she makes a mistake, it's my mistake. I will never say, well, Sharon messed that up. I messed that up. But if there's something coming my way and she can head that off for me, or she can take care of it for me, or she can give me heads up so it doesn't hit me, she does it, and she's amazing. So I'm not sure, based on the size of your individual businesses, if any of you are using any like AI assistants or you have an assistant of any sort, but I highly recommend putting a structure like that in place, because if you can't stay on task and if you can't stay consistent, having that accountability piece, and Jess has shared with me a lot about some of the things that you do as a group, but having that accountability piece is huge, huge. It doesn't eliminate the trips, and the fail forwards, as I like to call them, but it definitely reduces them and makes a huge difference. So I'd highly recommend that. Another piece that I'm really big about is setting goals, but I don't just like set them in my head. I actually have board approved goals in my role as superintendent. But some of the real estate stuff, like I share that with my family, like my wife and our kids, and Callum. We flipped a home 2 years ago, and my daughter was there doing a lot of work. But we had multiple meetings about what this was going to look like, and what was our purpose, what was our why, and what did those goals look like, what did those timelines look like, what was the ongoing like to-do list. And I loved it. It was amazing as a family to do that. And it happened to be our grandparents' home. I want to get into that big long story, but my one aunt ended up with a house, didn't really want it anymore. My grandmother's still living in it. So I was under contract for that house for almost 2 years before we actually closed, renovated it from top to bottom for the most part, and then sold it to a family friend who I just saw at a picnic last Friday. It's been in the house for almost 2 years now, loves it, and hadn't seen my daughter since then, and thanked my daughter, who, like I said, just turned 17, for all of her hard work at that house, because Mimi knew that she had been there a lot. So as a dad, that was awesome, to hear somebody say that to her, or like the day we gave her a bonus because we did well on the property, to like have that conversation about what that meant, and to have her like comprehend that at the time. I think she was 15, 16 maybe, was truly special. But it all goes back to like the relationship piece of us building those goals together. Like it wasn't my goal and I'm dragging the family all there. It was our family goal to provide a family or an individual with a beautiful home, because of some time and talents that we were blessed with, to renovate and fix up a place. But I shared that specific story really to talk about, we wrote those goals down. We shared those goals. We talked about those goals. And even my daughter being a teenager, and that was my first time, my wife grew up in a family that they weren't real hands-on when it came to work like that, where Jess and I grew up in a very blue collar family. And man, like what a difference it made. And my son, he'll turn 6 on Tuesday, he asked me just like a month ago, he goes, "Dad, when we buying another house?" And I said, we're not moving for a long time, but he goes, no, like another house, like Mimi's house. So like we can fix it up together. And I was like, man, I kind of thought that whole experience was lost on him. Because for the most part, he definitely helped, but it was hard because he was young. He got hurt several times. He got something in his eye one day. He seemed to fall a lot. I don't know. He made a relationship with the neighbor, which was cool. Kind of an old man who used to always come over and see him. But yeah, they came with its fair share of challenges for sure. But something I will forever remember. And then one of the last things I thought about last week that I wanted to share about is really, it's the small things that add up to be big wins. And I know from some of the stuff that Jess has shared, it's not like you go from here to here in Plexus and, you have to move all these units and things like that. Obviously that's great if you do, but you got to start building the small wins. And I think for a lot of folks, when you circle back to the building of the relationships and being consistent, being disciplined, when you don't see the small wins come fast enough, or the small wins don't seem like they're becoming big wins, it can be frustrating. But you have to just it's a cycle, right? It's a constant cycle of internally improving as a person, improving your skill, whether it's Plexus or selling cars or selling homes or being a superintendent or teacher, whatever the case may be. Sometimes the small wins are so small you don't see them, but you got to celebrate them. It's great to keep track of them because they really do add up to be big wins. And there's simple things, using some of the electronic calendar and email reminders, a to-do list that you can really do. I think pretty easily, as long as you're disciplined to set a structure to doing those things. A couple little examples, and I learned them from a book. It was a book I read years ago, and I'm actually working with a retired superintendent who wrote that book. Currently, he's executive coach now, and I have a small contract with him. So we've been meeting a couple times a month. But he has this book. It's called Clockwork, and it's a lot of these little strategies. And I heard him speak a couple times, and one of them was, people tend to show up at funerals and funeral homes when you work with folks out of respect, as you should. And then, of course, you go to the family stuff, right? And everyone sends cards when somebody passes, right? Like we have sort of a card that several that all of us have signed in central office, so that goes out automatically. But I had Sharon, my admin assistant, put in my calendar the year anniversary of any parent, sibling, spouse, or God forbid, child of somebody that in our organization that lost a loved one. Those handwritten cards go miles with people. Hey, I recognize this is the anniversary of your father's passing. I want you to know I'm thinking about you. I know how hard these times can be. Keep you in my thoughts and prayers. Sincerely, Josh. The number of hugs and I could tear up talking about the number of hugs and thank yous. I don't do it for that. I want people to know that they're cared about in our organization. The handwritten note piece and having somebody realize that moment was remembered. It's just a small example of filling people's buckets. Because in these roles, as everybody knows, anybody in a leadership role, you can say yes to somebody 500 times. The one time you say no is the one time somebody remembers. So by doing things like the cards as an example, celebrating the small things with folks really builds that capacity and that relationship, fills their bucket. So when you have to say no or something has to come out of the bucket, it's not as painful as taking something out of an empty bucket. So as I reflected on, the last week in preparation for this, and I really feel honored Jess asked me to do this. Those are some of the things that I think have worked well for me. I know they wouldn't necessarily work well for everybody, but I do think, I believe in my heart, there's no doubt about it. Building relationships, being consistent, being disciplined, and staying organized, hands down, is key to success in anything. I don't care whether it's your success is running 10 miles or running a 5K. If your success is being a really good parent, if your success is, owning Plexus at some point, I don't care what it is. These are the small pieces when you put them together and you build a habit out of them. And I don't think anybody could stop you at that point. I really think it's you become relentless at whatever you're pursuing, and I don't think there's any stopping if you can put those pieces in place. So, and I screw a lot of stuff up on a regular basis. I own my mistakes. I apologize for my mistakes, whether it's here or it's or with Jess. But I don't really. She makes a lot of mistakes in my direction. I don't make many in hers. But I'm quick to accept responsibility and apologize. Because although I've shared a lot of things that I have seen and observed and have grown in knowing that worked really well for me, but it doesn't mean that I don't still screw stuff up. or I don't have a moment where, I'm not, I don't say the perfect thing to somebody at work, or maybe I'm a little short because I'm tired and it's been a stressful day. And that's part of being human, right? But if you've built some capital with folks, those moments aren't as tough, if you haven't built that capital. So Jess told me about a half an hour. It's the duration of these meetings. So like a good teacher, I've planned